Greetings. Today's talk focuses on the fact that Tesla, or in Norway, the Ipace is supposedly outselling Tesla. The second thing we covered today is that there is a suggestion from our viewers regarding call options at the 340 for 2020, and we'll review this as our next show on options as well. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time on our channel, please take time to like and subscribe. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. I'm going to take time. Our running footage behind today is that there's a large amount of footage that Tesla has presented as a way to, sort of periodically introduce images. If you go to tesla.com on YouTube, you'll be able to see, a whole bunch of footage that Tesla has put up there. This happens to be the latest version that's running behind us, and thought it might be a nice backdrop for our discussion today. As you can hear, we're working on our sound quality. We try to change things up a little bit in order to give you guys something to see. So, the reminder, we're on Patreon, could use help there as well if you would. And we continue to take your suggestions and make changes accordingly to get a better result in terms of what we're doing for you. Now, two components of the show today. The first component I wanted to review is that the Jaguar Ipace is supposedly selling better than Tesla's Model X in Norway. And I thought this was kind of big news because at every turn there's a discussion of the fact that there's a new Tesla killer and this killer is going to do X, Y, or Z, etc. So my first comment is I'm a little bit skeptical, but the official numbers aren't in yet. It's entirely possible that's the case for the Model X because it's been out there for quite a while, and those that want it are definitely probably owners already. But I still think there's demand for it, even at the high price point. The second thing that pops up is the fact that one of the things that we've discussed in the past is the fact that there's an overall challenge going on for Tesla, which is something that's common in technology, something called cannibalization. So basically what happens is that if you have a Model 3 on order, or you're within 4 or 5 months of getting it, there's a disincentive to go ahead and buy another vehicle right now because you're not that far away. It used to be that you're a year or two away, and that was too long for a lot of people to wait to make their transition. So I think it's entirely possible that those sales numbers are accurate, but I also do believe that as the Model 3s become available, and especially now that Tesla has started showing off the new Model 3 to potential or to reservation holders, it makes it very clear. So my expectation is that the Model S and Model X will see declining sales over the next 30 to 60 days in much of Europe as we move into February deliveries of the Model 3, probably Norway first and then going from there. So a real accurate assessment of how Tesla's doing is going to be once the Model 3 hits. What are those numbers compared to the Ipace, I think is going to be a lot more interesting. The other note here is that the Ipace does come in on the low end of the price range, at least in the United States. The numbers I've seen have it priced at $75,000, and that's kind of at the bottom end of the vehicles available, or the Model X available with the shorter battery life. And so I think they sort of favorably compete with each other, but as you move up, there's really no competition, especially when you add supercharger capabilities and all the things that Tesla does. And then the final note that I wanted to cover with this whole thing is the fact that, if you look at it, Tesla has been consulting Jaguar, all the major makers except for perhaps VW. Tesla's been offering consulting services to assist them in their ability to produce and deliver their cars. So I would say that The answer is I agree with what's been stated, but I don't think it's a big deal, bottom line. Um, the next thing that I wanted to move on to, so the overall reason why this is worth covering the Ipace discussion is the fact that, customers are really waiting for something other than Tesla, until Tesla potentially loses large market share as large players deliver interesting vehicles. I also think that, I mean, the Model X is a decent looking car, but because of those rear doors, it really forces a shape on the vehicle that I just think is okay, not terrific. And I'm looking forward to the Model Y when they have more flexibility in the design of the vehicle, driven by the absence of the gull-wing doors. So the next thing I wanted to dive into is our next show on options. I'm going to take time to renew this backwards to keep our background going, if you will. So in the case of, in sort of this is option 6, if you will, it was recommended by a viewer that if in fact Tesla is going to come out and join the S&P within 4 quarters, which are the number of quarters required of profitability to immediately be eligible for S&P, and Tesla's automatically introduced. So if you hadn't heard our discussion of the S&P, of Tesla entering the S&P, I wanted to note to you that this is a big discussion topic that's going on, is when does Tesla enter the S&P? And the answer is after you've been profitable for 4 quarters, the size of the market cap of Tesla, et cetera, everything qualifies except for the number of earnings quarters. So the next thing is that if you look at a question of what happens to stock prices as they enter indices, particularly the largest one, which is the S&P, and the answer is you tend to see a rise in the value of that stock price by as much as 20%. So in theory, the introduction to the S&P should be worth something in the range of 60 to 80 points increase in the stock price from wherever it is. And so this kind of brings up the question mark of, you really want to track this as it comes in, because a lot of people will actually start buying stock in anticipation of this to pick up that nice return that they'll get as this process occurs. So moving on to the question that our viewer presented was, why not buy what's called a 2020 400 call on Tesla, which he articulated 2 days ago is currently at $50. So let's sort of tear this apart right now. There are 3 components of an options pricing. The first is time value. So 2020 is a year and a half away. So you have a year and a half for the stock price to reach that price point. The second point that he made is the strike price is at $400 a share. Tesla's current price is about $340 a share. So that option is what's called out of the money, meaning that it hasn't reached $400 yet. So you're taking on some risk with a question mark. And the question mark is, will Tesla's stock price reach $400 a share within a year and a half from now? And I think there's a 90%, 95% chance of that occurring. So I actually think that's a pretty interesting option to look at purchasing. In fact, I think after the next earnings announcement being solid, and particularly if it exceeds expectations, I expect it to actually hit $400 a share. So I think that's a reasonable, I don't want to call it a bet, but I think it's a reasonable analysis that it should get there, because I think by then Tesla sales will have doubled, driven by the Model 3 growth, and then we'll have new products like the truck coming in. So I think there's no doubt that we end up at $400 a share in a year and a half. So I think that's a pretty good assessment. The last component of pricing of options is delta, which is how volatile is the stock. And the answer is, yeah, it's very volatile. But when you have that much time value to work with, the volatility doesn't affect things much, because Tesla will probably go up, down, all these other things until then. But by then, I think it comfortably ends up above, at or above the $400 strike price. So in general, I think that the option that was suggested is attractive. It's very low risk. it's very high likelihood that the stock achieves what's been described. And then the final assessment of why to do this is that that $50 option, once Tesla gets to $400 a share, I think it'll get there in about 6 months from now. Once it gets there, the value of the option will accelerate. So I expect that option to be worth, by 2020, I expect it to be worth, 10 or 20 times what its current value is. And it could be higher, it could be lower, but I think there's a high likelihood it achieves that. So I think it's an interesting option to look at and consider as a possibility. The next thing I wanted to sort of review is kind of where are we with Tesla stock price, et cetera, right now. So as we've discussed before, I've suggested in the option space that there's sort of these categories of what it tends to occur with stocks. Right now, we're 3 weeks away from when Tesla announced earnings, almost 4 weeks. And so what tends to happen is that there's really no news on which the stock really can trade heavily because there's no major announcements or other activities other than the fact that they're going to be introducing the European, delivery schedule. I think there is news that's going to happen, which is Tesla may announce the number of reservation holders they have mid-December, so that could potentially influence the stock as we enter the next earnings announcement coming out in January. The second thing that's happening is that I believe that there's an issue with how much cash Tesla has on hand as of mid-December is a big deal. So once you actually sign on the dotted line to purchase your vehicle, if you're within 8 weeks of purchasing or your vehicle arriving, you're required to increase from the $1,000 deposit, I believe, to $2,500 US. So in theory, the locations that are in other parts of the world will have a number comparable to that they have to put up. It might actually be higher, but when if you push out, let's say 20, 50, 100,000 people and an extra $2,500, that's, I guess, 250 million bucks. And those numbers will really help Tesla to meet its loan covenant deadlines of January 15th as well as March 15th in terms of paying those numbers. And that's somewhat influencing the stock currently. The other thing that I was fascinated by, and for those of you who want to make money off of options and starting to understand how to do so and starting to understand Tesla. By the way, I'm not a registered rep, so I just wanted to note that to you. But I'm just an experienced trader. I also wanted to note that stocks, I believe, tend to end up in what are called trading ranges. So what you'll notice right now is over the last year or so, or particularly in the last 4 months, Tesla has a trading range of between about 385 and 250. And right now the stock is at 340. So without news to push the stock around, really incredible news on growth of production, et cetera, you kind of end up, we've kind of ended up with, we're in the doctor zone here. We've kind of moved into a zone where the stock sort of floats on whatever news or an analyst might make something. Usually Tesla has a lot of negative comments to battle from different organizations. So that's kind of what I'm expecting right now that sort of influences stock in the short term. The other variable that's influencing things right now is the fact that the market is on the verge of crashing. Excuse me. The main reason is that the growth rate of the companies is slowing down, and therefore the stock price has to slow down to embrace the growth rate of a whole bunch of companies, particularly oil companies, as we discussed before. So it's my belief, therefore, with Tesla that we're kind of in a trading range. Maybe it's at the bottom end of about 330, maybe 325, and the top end is in the mid 350s. And it will kind of float into this until the end of November, perhaps the beginning of December, when there's company news coming out, or analysts will start stating, based on the number of units produced by Tesla, what their expectations of earnings are going to be. And then I expect for there to be a buildup of stock price heading into those earnings, especially if it's confirmed that the number of units that are being produced is at or above expectation. Obviously, if it's lower, it's going to be bad news. But this is an important time for the company to make sure it makes money. So I'm highly confident they're going to produce and sell every car they can in that period, as well as take in more deposits if possible from the large number of new European folks that might be acquiring. So I wanted to thank you. I saw Bob and Donovan. I saw you guys make comments there. Thanks for the comment there regarding the short sellers will enjoy the news of Tesla's move. That's true. Hey, Jerry, that's true. I'm definitely up early. You know, getting out there and getting it done is not a bad way to go. The shorts will enjoy that outsell in Norway and its implications. Again, I don't think it's a big deal, but it is worth, in general, noting that that's occurring. Any rate, you know, we're at about 16 minutes. I wanted to review with you. I actually am going to, we've been talking about health issues at the end of each video. And what I've noticed is that I have a tendency to do my leg lifts post our videos. And I've decided today to do it during the video. That way I can make sure it's done for the day and I don't have to remember to do it. So I think that, you know, there are little things we can all do to improve our health on a regular basis. An omega-3 20 leg lifts each day to help strengthen your quad muscles is a great way to go. Remember, no eating within 4 hours of going to bed, or 2 hours of going to bed, preferably 4, because the food will be completely digested and no need for acid indigestion. Also, circadian rhythms, try to go to bed at the same time every night for a couple of weeks and see how, if you feel better doing that. In particular, a lot of people end up on the weekends switching up their sleep schedules and it messes up just comfort of life heading to the following week. So another item just to consider. I wanted to, you know, our tendency is to not elongate if we don't have a lot to cover. Wanted to introduce this new discussion on options, as well as the discussion of the Ipace outselling Tesla in the Norway zone. The other thing I wanted to sort of note today is I reviewed the option suggestion that was made in terms of the long-term option. I think it's a good idea. It's fairly safe. In my next show, you know, I'll probably introduce, I want to say 3 options or 3 possibilities. So instead of just saying, let's look at the 2020 400 calls, I would suggest, why not look at a call that's 6 or 8 months out at 400? You know, like I'm particularly intrigued by something like a 400 call in the March of 2019 zone. And the reason is that it's, hey, Roger, in Kampala, Uganda, thanks for saying hellos. You too, Jerry, etc. I'm intrigued by the fact that, you know, I like something like a 380 to 400 call in that March timeframe, because there's a huge amount of news on Tesla that will be out by then. The problem with my suggestion is that right now the market smells like it could crash. So Tesla that's at 340 right now, that could end up meandering around 300 because the general market is extremely nervous about what's going to happen right now. And so therefore you could have this issue pop up. So at any rate, you know, I think it's an interesting situation, worth reviewing. I think it's an opportunity to make some money. Wanted to thank all of you for joining us. If this is the first time on our channel, please take time to like us, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss anything when we're on. I love music, so. This gives me a chance to practice Ode to Joy by Beethoven. Wanted to thank all of you for joining us once again. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Could use your help on Patreon if you would. Please like and subscribe. All your comments appreciated. And we'll try to respond to them, and they may end up being in a show because it's a good collaborative suggestion of what we should be covering. Hope you have a great day. we'll be back on again in a couple of days, covering sort of different segments of what we tend to do for our shows, and look forward to any and all comments that you might have. Thanks again for joining us, and have a good day.